I believe that your country is conquered, and it's because of your moral philosophies and ideologies. They are weak.
It just sounds to me like you're redefining wars. This is the argument that every dictator in history has made.
We have a kind of hilarious clip to go over of Tim Pool speaking with the two Triggernometry guys as they're discussing the ways that Trump is overstepping the Constitution, overreaching the executive, where Tim Pool made some arguments that I just had to address. So if you can, to start, leave us a like. It really helps us out. Leave us a like. We really appreciate it. And let's get right into the video.
If Donald Trump tried to steal the presidency on January 6th, would you support Joe Biden sending in the National Guard to shut down Donald Trump and arrest anybody on those Capitol grounds with or without evidence to stop the insurrection? They're probably gonna say yes. People might tell you they don't like what Abraham Lincoln did, but they're more than happy to tell you how much they love the results. And so the question then becomes, do we play this game of, for PR reasons, I'm gonna pretend like Abraham Lincoln was the bad guy? Or do we say, in times of war, a wartime president makes difficult decisions which are outside what our principles purport to be?
But we're not in the time of war.
And it's also as well, Tim. No, we're not.
So when
Tim, can I just make a point? And this
we are in
is
time of war.
Right. Okay. We'll come to that in a second. When the government takes away rights, it is very difficult, if not almost impossible, for you to get them back. Can we just agree that?
Yes.
This is Tim Pool's sad attempt to justify the Trump administration stating that they were looking at doing one of the most unconstitutional things I've ever heard and taking away habeas corpus, the right to a trial, for their go-to justification of having to fight immigration, which adds to their attacks on due process, which, as we've said, it's going to keep going and going. They are going to keep pushing the line and see how much rights they can take away. But I think the most insane thing here is Tim's assertion that we're in wartime to justify it, which just isn't true by any stretch of the imagination. If we're at wartime right now, there's never been a time in history where we haven't been at war or in war times. And the Lincoln thing is also weird, which we'll get more into as we go. But if right now is comparable to the Civil War, Lincoln also arrested his political opponents, censored the press, which Republicans cried to be the victims of. Shouldn't they be okay with it though? It's war times. It's what Biden had to do, right?
It just sounds to me like you're redefining wars to give yourself more power, which is what every dictator has always done in history, which is to say the situation's so bad, I need extra power to deal with it.
Is Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
Well, look.
Yes or no?
We are not in a war situation.
Is Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
We are not in a war situation.
Yeah, was Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
We are not in a war situation, is the point.
Okay, you are right. I'll just say you're right. Okay, now is Abraham Lincoln a dictator?
So look,
yes or no?
Tim, the theoretical examples you give.
It's not a theoretic, it's American history.
Fine, but it's not related to the current moment, which is what we're talking about.
So in the
so
context
you're saying,
of...
let me just lay out the argument that you made. If I represent it incorrectly, you tell me. The core of your argument that you're making, right, is that because we are in a 4th, 5th, 6th generational warfare situation, a different set of rules ought to apply. It's a wartime, therefore, just like you can apply martial law, just like you can suspend this or that or whatever, right? And the point I'm making to you is this is the argument that every dictator in history has made.
I think Abraham Lincoln pretty clearly acted authoritarian or like a dictator during the Civil War. Not a single soul would debate that. There's not a historian or academic who would say no to that. So I don't know why he's asking it like a gotcha. For Lincoln, it's more so about the unfathomable and unprecedented nature of your country warring with itself, being torn apart from the inside out, not just war, but civil war, mass civil unrest, and whether or not that maybe justifies, not so much justifies even as much as explains the actions, though to take that and to try to compare it to Trump wanting to do so to target migrants, even though border crossing numbers are down, migrants commit 2 times less violent acts than U.S. citizens. And I mean, they're continually dropping, they're doing the deportations. What more could you want? And it's migrants for now, right? But it's an insane comparison to when they would say Trump is the Nelson Mandela of America because he was being indicted by grand juries of Americans and convicted by juries. But also keep in mind, Trump came in office saying he was only going to target immigrants and undocumented immigrants at that, criminals, right? Where we've seen U.S. citizens now deported. How long before that would become the case with habeas corpus when it's suspended? Not a risk that I want to take personally.
I believe that your country is conquered, and it's because of your moral philosophies and ideologies. They are weak and they allow to be destroyed.
What do you mean by conquered?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got a large influx of non-citizens with psychotic, violent beliefs that are chopping people's heads off in the street. You're not allowed to talk about it, and without going to jail. You've got gangs that have been operating for decades. I look at the UK, and it's like you've got a political body threatening to extradite American citizens for us expressing our opinions on our own country. You can't have screwdrivers in public. The things that your country has done to its citizenry is shockingly insane to an American. And it's absurd that you have such a massive influx of a disparate ideology coming into your country and imposing its will on you, and you do nothing about it. And in fact, your government largely protects, supports, and votes for it. I mean, that's insane.
Hold on. Oh, no, wait, slow down.
Right. And we have a rapist as president who is deporting U.S. citizens as well as deporting green card holders and student visas for their beliefs. So actually deporting people for their words. And there's things you literally can't say in this country, like free Palestine, right? I think it's so weird that the right will be the most unpatriotic, un-American, unconstitutional people that stand against everything that America stands for. Tim literally here justifying Trump if he were to suspend habeas corpus is a perfect example of that, only to turn around and think they're patriots because they're like, oh, we'll slam dunk on the UK and other countries and talk about how shit they are, that America is so much richer. Like, that's not patriotism. That's just ego. You can't be anti-constitution, anti-democracy, hold Trump over all American principles and values, and then still consider yourself a patriot. Where I really would love to know what these people think patriotism is and what it means, because they literally think it's like undying loyalty to one man, which I'm sorry to tell you, but that's called being in a cult.